Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the High Grade Podcast. It's your girl Chanel.
And also your girl Chanel.
So today we are talking about should we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. So when we look up the definition of vulnerable, it tells us that it is the possibility of being attacked or harmed, whether that is physically or emotionally. Now, with that in mind, do you think that we should allow ourselves to be vulnerable in day-to-day life?
I don't know. I feel like welcoming vulnerability or being open to, letting your guard down, I think is something that we should all be in tune with, because I feel like when we leave the house, essentially, as soon as we step out the door, it's almost like we armor up. Our clothes are almost like our armor when we go out, and we almost turn into, I wouldn't say a completely different person, but it's almost like we put a mask on. And so we show a version of ourselves out to the world that isn't our true and authentic self. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
For the majority of people, they find it difficult to differ between when I should welcome vulnerability and when I shouldn't, because I think when you're trying to build something with someone, it could be a friendship, it could be a romantic relationship, it doesn't have to be like with the opposite sex, but in order for something genuine to build, I do feel like you have to let your guard down and have an element of vulnerability, because that's the only way that trust can build. And so I think we should welcome it, but then if you've been hurt multiple times in the past, or you've experienced trauma, or if you have let your guard down but then it's sort of backfired against you, at what point then are you able to say, okay, now I'm going to put my guard down?
Yeah, I think it's hard. If I use myself as an example, I know that prior to pretty much this year alone, I was someone who was very guarded up. Like, I just never let anyone.
Never believe that.
No, but
Is that why you were moving stush when I met you? Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense, my guy.
Do you know why it's so crazy? Because my partner was like, we had like I think maybe a Christmas or something, like my family was round, my partner was round, and they were talking about me, and my uncle said, it was my uncle and my mum were saying, I've never seen Chanel cry, I've never seen her upset, she's just like a stone, like you don't get anything from her. Like, this was last year, and my partner was like, what? Like,
sensitive Sally over here.
He was like, what? He was like, that's a gas, because she cries all the time. And it's just so weird. Like, prior to like this year, I've always had my guard up. Like, I've been like through stuff, and it just kind of always made me very cold and very like put my guard up, because I just don't, I feel like I have a very big heart, so I give out a lot, but then it hurts a lot if I either don't get the same back or someone hurts me in some way. So I've just been very guarded, and it's really weird because the people that know me like very, very well know that I'm like not a crybaby, but a bit of a crybaby.
Don't talk about Chanel's brother, because she will literally
I'll fight you. I will fight you.
Look at her.
I'm getting ready, innit?
Yeah, but do you think though that your partner has a different perspective of your vulnerability because you feel almost like safest with him? Because quite often, when you are in a romantic relationship with someone, that's when you're like, the layers have come off, and like you are your most vulnerable self when you're with your significant other. And so do you feel like his perspective is different because of that, and whereby when you're with your family, because you've been through a lot with your family, essentially you always want to almost be like Chanel, the stronger one, the one that holds it together for everyone, which is why people may have that view of you that you are, a stone, happy or sad, people can't necessarily tell the difference?
I think, that probably plays a really big role in it. But I also think at the beginning of my relationship, I was probably the same, probably quite a bit stone. I think that, where people in my family obviously known me since being a child, and I've kind of been the same. Like, I was always the one in my family that was like the strongest, if you like, the most emotionally resilient, kind of pulling everyone together and holding everyone together. And then I think I just got to a point where I kind of just like not broke down, but it was like it's getting too much, like years and years of putting on my own facade, thinking that, I'm fine, like I'm on top of the world, nothing can get me down, like, things upset me, but I'm not going to show it. Like, nobody knows what's going on because they just see Chanel, and Chanel's smiling and she's happy and she's making jokes. And I think I just got to a point where kind of just broke down. Like there were so many things that you're like just building up, and at some point that it's going to get too high and it's going to fall down. And I just think, I got to a point, and the first time that I remember being vulnerable and kind of sharing my story and sharing how I felt and just being more in touch with my emotions and allowing myself to be more vulnerable. I think that I really went through like a path of becoming a lot more self-aware of myself, and like building stuff up is really hard, especially when it's over months or years of just building up emotions and not being able to like channel them out. You just end up a very kind of sad or angry person.
Yeah.
And I think allowing yourself to be vulnerable just allows you to be happier.
That's a really good point. You almost feel empowered, don't you?
Yeah.
It's almost like the reverse.
It is the reverse, yeah. But until you kind of, it's always the scariest thing doing it once, and it doesn't have to be like to do with your emotions. It could be just being vulnerable and allowing someone to get to know you, or being vulnerable and reaching out and asking for help because you don't know how to do something. It could be any one of those things, but I think once you do it once and do you know what, it's actually not that scary. You probably helped someone by doing it, but most importantly, you kind of helped yourself, because you're just building up this dark cloud inside of you until one day. This sort
of segues really nicely into the next question I was going to ask, which was, when you sort of do have this guard up, and you don't allow yourself to, be vulnerable, what are the sort of limitations that could bring?
I just think you're not being like your authentic you. And it's very hard to play a different character to who you are. And I don't think you're letting people kind of get to know the real you. I think when you kind of are vulnerable and you just put yourself out there, people get to know kind of your most authentic self, and people generally get on with people that are real and that have a pure soul. You relate a lot more. I'm sure we can all think of someone that we think, like they're real, they're really down to earth, like they're very pure, and I would much rather get on with that person rather than someone who I think maybe has like 2 or 3 kind of masks that they put on, and everything's very perfect and in their life.
But then I guess, what would your thoughts be then on, because it's all good and well being vulnerable and allowing yourself to let your guard down. Again, doesn't have to be in like a physical relationship, it could just be in any type of relationship that you do have. But then how do you differ between understanding when you should let your guard down and when you should keep your guard up? Because I think there are a lot of people out there that may take your vulnerability for granted and may manipulate you or just take advantage of you, essentially. And then it's almost like, oh, well, I knew I shouldn't have let my guard down. I knew I shouldn't have done this. And I think this probably relates more to, I guess, being in a romantic relationship with someone where, you've built up something together. You've got to a particular place. You've allowed yourself to be vulnerable. You've allowed yourself to get to that point where you're open and transparent and fully honest. And it's just that period of risk almost, but that's where like the most beautiful things happen, when you're at that period of, yes, I'm vulnerable, and allowing yourself to be in the care of someone else. But then when you do that and that person takes advantage of you or manipulates you or doesn't fully appreciate what you've done and then hurts you, how do you then pick yourself up from that situation and then want to do it again with someone else?
I think it's hard, because if you are someone who does put their guard down, putting your guard down is very, very difficult. That's almost a challenge in itself. So to do that and then to get like almost like a punishment for doing that because someone takes advantage of that or doesn't appreciate that you've kind of put your guard down is very hard. But I think it's just remembering that people are not going to treat you the same way that you treat them all the time. And some people, everyone's going to get into a situation, albeit like friendships, relationships, in the workplace, where you feel like you've let your guard down, you've let someone in, you've done something for someone, or do you know what I mean, you've reached out because you needed help and you didn't want to do it, but you've done it anyway. And everyone's going to get to a point where someone along the line will take advantage of that, maybe use it against you. But I just think it's just, do you know what, that's more, it's a reflection of them more than it's a reflection of you. And it kind of happens, it will make you grow. It'll make you stronger. You just have to get back up and think, do you know what? It's a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of me. You'll find someone who will it's an energy magnet. Letting your guard down is an energy magnet, and I think you will attract the right people around you once you do it, but you're always going to get a bad egg. So.
And then from the reverse then,
Jesus.
but let's say you're trying to build something with someone, it could be like a business relationship, romantic relationship, whatever, where you're ready to like let your guard down, but that's just the way that you are. You're very much like, I wear my heart on my sleeve type of person. But then the person who you're working with or trying to build something with is very much like, guard up, I've got to test things out. You're on probation for like 2 years, and then if you pass probation, then I'll let my guard down, kind of thing. How does that almost limit the other person and the potential? Like, is it almost like you're stopping the potential growth because you're being, I guess, stubborn? But then could you class it as being stubborn if you're just trying to protect yourself?
I think it's hard. I think obviously in an ideal world, everyone would be kind of vulnerable and allow you to see their full self. But I think that it's also important that you may be on a journey that someone's not ready to go on yet, and you can almost encourage them and you can help them. But if they're not, unless you're ready to go on that journey yourself, no one can make you do it. And it's just about understanding that whether it is a friendship, in the workplace, relationship, that we're all very different people, and it's just about understanding where that person's coming from, the reasons that they may not want to be vulnerable, and just allowing them to be themselves and not making them feel bad for not wanting to put their guard down.
Sorry to stop you there, but do you think that trying to understand the person who has their guard up is the responsibility of that person, or do you think it's the responsibility of the person who has got their guard up to understand why their guard is up and what they can do to overcome it? Because do you think it's, you know, having your guard up and letting yourself be vulnerable is something that you can switch on and switch off just like that? Or is it something that, you know, everyone is built to have their guard down, something's happened to them, which means their guard has been up, and then it will be a sort of process where slowly but surely we then break down that wall?
I wouldn't say it's anyone's responsibility, whether that be like my responsibility or the person's responsibility.
Do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think, obviously that person knows whether they want to look into themselves or not, probably why they are. But if you're friends with someone, or if you're in the workplace, if you're in a relationship, I don't think it's anyone's like responsibility. It's just about kind of working together, collaborating, and just to find a level where you can kind of connect. And if that person isn't ready to let their guard down, like, that's fine. People kind of do things at their own stages. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's anyone's responsibility. I think that everyone's just different, and it's okay to be different as long as it's not kind of jeopardizing your relationship, I guess. But
I would have to disagree with you.
Go on, hit me with it.
Because I just think that everyone has been through something, which means our guard is going to be up particularly when we meet new people, because we don't know what their intentions are, we don't know what type of person they are. So, you know, it's human nature to want to protect ourselves. But I think if you are trying to foster something new with someone, or like you could potentially see a future in something or a future in someone, and you have to be your true self in order to develop something authentically, right? And so I think it's your responsibility as that person to work on you and understand why you are that way. Why is your guard up? Why, you know, have you not allowed yourself to be vulnerable? And then I think it's your responsibility to work on trying to put your guard down. Because I think, let's say it's me and you, okay? You're very much like, yeah, I lay my cards on the table, but I'm very much like, no, have to try and figure you out. Have you got ulterior motives? So it's like, every gesture that you do for me, I would look at it not for what you've done, but I would look at it like, okay, so she's done that for me. What does she want? Like, she's done this for me. It means that Like, I'm never going to take what you've done for me at face value. I'm always going to look at it with, okay, so she bought me lunch today. Okay, that means she's going to ask me for a favor later. Or she bought me lunch today. Okay, yeah, that means she's done something wrong. Because I'm not allowing myself to be vulnerable and just to let my guard down. So I'm always seeing whatever you do as having an ulterior motive almost. And so does that impacts what we can create together, doesn't it? Because you eventually become frustrated because you're just like, well, I'm just trying to be myself.
But I think in that scenario, you're like to me, even like you saying that, I think, wow, that must be quite like a heavy load to carry on your shoulders. But that's going to affect you, because either way, I'm going to move on.
Would you?
I think if it got to a stage where I'm given everything and I'm constantly being questioned, or do you know what I mean? I think it would get tiring. I do think it would get tiring. So either way, it's not, I'm going to be myself and I'm going to make sure that I get to the highest place that I need to be with the people that are good around me. I think the only person that you're damaging in the process of acting like that would be yourself.
So then, to throw it back at you, at what point do you then say, do you know what? I've given you so much patience. I've sort of dealt with you for X amount of time. We've got into countless arguments and countless discussions and fallen out because you just can't see me for what I am, essentially. And I'm just trying to be just this genuine person, but you're not allowing me to be. So then at what point do you get to where you decide, you know what? Nah, I'm out.
There 100% will be a point where you get to the stage, and it's just in everything, not in just this, in every scenario, everyone has a limit. And there's, once you get to that limit, whatever that limit may be for each person, they're just going to be like, I've had enough. Like,
do you know why I asked this? Because I know that there's been like, I've got someone in my head particularly as well, but like, let's say you're in like a romantic relationship with someone, right? And you've got your guard up. Usually it's always the girl that's got their guard up. And you know, the girl's been hurt before, whatever. And this guy, genuine guy, comes along, wants to be nice, wants to just, you know, treat said girl with, you know, all of the things that she should be treated with, you know, the usual like hoopty-ha basically. And everything that this guy, or every gesture that this guy is doing, the girl is like, oh, thanks, but not really allowing herself to be like, oh, that's so sweet. Do you know what I mean? Not allowing herself to be just accepting of what he's trying to do for her, essentially. So this burden, essentially, that you've put onto this person because you can't let your guard down, and you're never seeing things at face value. Is it then acceptable for the guy to just be like, okay, bye, see you later? Because if you can't take me for what I am, then I'm going. Or should it be the responsibility, or if the guy really has good intentions, he would want to work with said girl and like hash things out and really get to the bottom of why she is the way that she is. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but I think in a relationship like situation, that would happen. I can't imagine someone just being like, I don't like the way you are, bye, unless it's very, very early stages and you don't have any feelings invested. But this is what I'm saying,
because we're both looking at it from a lens of, we've been in very long-term relationships. So you've been with your guy for, I don't know, 3-4 years, and me almost 8 years. So I'm looking at it from a lens of, yeah, we've been together for ages. But what if you've maybe, for example, come out of a long-term relationship and then you're ready to like go out onto the market and, you know, meet someone new, but then actually, because of the hurt that you've experienced in the past, you can't allow yourself to put your guard down. So you're going into something fresh and new, but then if you can't ever let your guard down, how do you expect to build something? But then is it your responsibility to sort of not go out to market until you can say, yeah, do you know what, I'm fully ready to be 100% vulnerable? Or is it sort of like a work in progress where you should meet someone and then, you know, they should then work kind of with you and just be like very understanding to maybe what you've been through, and then want to work with you to...
Yeah, I think it would be a case of people would have to work together. Obviously it's the responsibility of the girl to know that like this behavior that I'm portraying is going to lead to X. So if I don't want to lead to X, obviously if you're pushing someone away constantly, one day they are going to go. So I think it should be the responsibility of the girl in that situation to kind of just be like, look, my behavior is going to lead to this outcome, which may be that he might resent me, or he might kind of leave because we can't connect, or I can't let my guard down, I can't let him in. But
should we then not even think about exploring something new then, if we're not ready to, I guess, let go of what may have happened to us, which results in us having our guard up, if that makes sense?
I don't think so, because I think like you find that one person or that one friend, that one whoever who can kind of help you do that. Do you know what I mean? You may be one way for a very long time, and then you just meet someone and you don't know what it is about them, whether that be a relationship or whoever, who kind of just takes that guard down and makes you feel safe and makes you feel like you are in a safe space to be vulnerable. So I wouldn't say don't go and like look for new opportunities or friendships, relationships or whatnot, but I do think that just for yourself, not allowing yourself to be vulnerable at all, you just build up a lot of kind of inside bad feelings and a lot of weight that you're carrying on your shoulder that in the end you're only gonna like damage and resent yourself.
What negative sort of, I guess, outcome or consequence do you think comes from just having your guard up and just bottling up everything and not necessarily really facing things that have happened to you which prevent you from being vulnerable?
I just think you're just not your like I said before, you're not your real person, and putting on a character all the time it's just stressful because you've got someone inside who's just saying, look, I just want to be free, like let me out. It's like a hose pipe. If you turn on like the tap and you let the water come out the hose pipe, it comes out naturally. But if there's like a knot in the hose pipe,
oh, there she goes
again there's gonna, do you know what I mean? It's like spitting out. It can't come out. And I almost that kind of like can compare to your emotions. If you are the hose that you're knotting up, like you can't get the water out, you can't get your emotions out. It's very do you know what I mean? So yeah, I just think it's hard because until you kind of just allow yourself to put your trust in someone or something to be vulnerable with, it's very hard. But you're just you're doing yourself a disservice if you just bottle up everything and you're not vulnerable, because I just think you'll become very self-aware as soon as you let a little bit of vulnerability, and you will reap the rewards of just allowing yourself to be vulnerable and having, do you know what I mean, that trust circle that you can.
I think if I sort of relate it back to a more sort of professional element, me wanting to start that conversation with you about, you know, am I making the right decision in my career? I think just talking about this now, I guess the fear of always like putting off that conversation came from the fact that me leaving this security of a full-time job meant that I was in a very vulnerable position. So vulnerable financially, vulnerable in terms of like my career. And I guess me having that conversation with you, it was the fear of almost bearing my soul and like not wanting to be judged or not wanting to be vulnerable and then almost be turned down, and like you then turn around and say, oh well, look at you all vulnerable and you've made the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's almost giving someone like
too much
the control
power.
of a parachute.
Yes.
Or something.
Yes.
Like you put if it was like parachute, you've given someone the control of the parachute, so you are essentially giving someone a lot of power to either cut your parachute and you fall or to let you fly, sort of thing. So it's very, when you put yourself out there and you are vulnerable, in that moment you were scared,
sink or
thinking
swim.
yeah, literally a sink or swim. You either swim and you flourish, or someone's going to make you sink, regret your decision, question yourself. And it is scary, but obviously it worked out well for you.
I know, but I just think like, what about those situations where like it doesn't work out and people, you know, allow themselves to be vulnerable and, you know, something happens to them where they regret their decision of being vulnerable, and then that really does present some trauma in their life later on down the line. I guess like, what would be your advice, or what would you say to someone who's in that position? Because I think vulnerability, although we've talked a lot about it in the sense of a romantic relationship, I think whether you're vulnerable or not shows in relationships, friendships, workplace, and all of the other balls that you juggle in your life. Because, you know, I literally do not like meeting new people. Like, I have my 5 friends, thank you very much, and I will I have my 5 friends and I will remain with my 5 friends.
That many.
Yeah. Probably not even 5, to be honest, but like I don't like meeting new people, but that's more of like the social element of things. I just don't really like meeting new people. But because of that, I have my guard up.
Yeah.
And so because I have my guard up and I'm that way inclined, a lot of the time at work, if I don't really need to have an interaction with you, then I won't, kind of thing. But that is not like the attitude to have. That's just not the way to be, because how can I be at work and I'm going to obviously I'm going to have interactions with loads of different people, but then say, do you know what, because my vulnerability doesn't allow me to like speak to you if I don't have to. That just reflects in like all elements of your life. So I don't think it's something that you can like switch on or switch off in romantic, personal, work, family, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think giving an example of where like vulnerability has gone wrong. So when I was doing one of my refurbishments for one of my properties, I had a team of Romanian builders or painters there to help me, and they are very good.
Yep, they can build a house in a day.
Yeah, so I'm quite kind. So whenever I have like, I don't know if it's kind or just like a normal gesture, but whenever I have like builders round or anything like that, I make sure like I go out and get them lunch. And so one of like the Romanians came with me, and he literally filled up like a basket full of stuff. Like when I say like get them lunch, like literally a basket full of like hot chicken from the deli, like loaf of bread, milk, like sweets, crisp. Like I mean, like when I looked at it, I thought you're taking the piss a little bit, but it's fine. So yeah, so I got all that for them. It was fine. Went back, they finished their job, and then when they left, I remembered that I left my bracelet lying around, but it was like in a room where I told them don't go in that room because I had a bit of my stuff in, and the room didn't need painting. It was fine. And then when they left, I just remembered, I was like, oh yeah, I took it off because I think I didn't want to get paint on it, so I just put it down, and it had gone.
Oh my god, are you joking?
And it was my favourite, like, it was like Michael Kors, it was like sparkly, it was like my favourite bracelet, and they took it.
I'm in shock. I mean, I'm not in shock because like...
Yeah, I know, but yeah, they fucking took it. And the thing is, like, I was so upset because I lost the bracelet.
You're even getting upset now.
No, because obviously I lost the bracelet, and it was my favourite bracelet, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's fine, like, things like that can be replaced, but it was more the fact that, like, I actually went to the supermarket. Like,
you did more than you should have done.
Spent my money on getting them lunch. Like, literally just said, pick whatever you want. Like, they filled a whole fucking basket full of stuff to then, like, for like one of them to take, like, to steal from me. And I'm like, I was so upset. Like, I was just angry because I was just like, why? It feels like they've just, like, pissed on me or something. Like, you've just been nice to someone. You've been kind. Almost like letting your vulnerability kind of by being kind, and just because they could have gone out and got paid for their own lunch. I didn't have to go out and get it for them. Real. And I didn't have to let them kind of, like, it came up to like £18 for like 3 of them.
Yeah.
Which, like, for a suit, that's a whole like week. I
mean, if we just went for like meal deal, you could have been free. It could have been a 9 quidder.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it doesn't sound expensive, but like, do you know what I mean?
I guess it's going over and beyond, like above and beyond.
Yeah. What I didn't have to do it.
Yeah, because if you're paying them to paint your house anyway, they're getting, I guess,
a lot of money.
Yeah, for
paint is so
painting.
Expensive. Yeah.
And so you doing that, I think there is an element of like the vulnerability in it. But then I guess now the question is, so when you are in that situation again, how would you approach it?
But it's weird because in the back of my head, I'm thinking, like, I know that I've been kind to someone before and they've kind of just like put my kindness in the bin. So it's like, but that's just, I think that is just the way I am. So I probably would do it again.
You would do it again?
Well, not to the same people, but not to the same people. But if I was going out to the shops or something, I would ask, do you want anything for lunch? Do you want a drink? Because I just think that's the way I am. Like, I haven't let that situation negatively impacted me too much because that's just the person I am, and I will continue to be kind and people will continue to put like throw it in your face, but that's kind of just life. But I just remember, like, I will always remember that situation because I was so hurt by it, not because they stole it, because whatever, like, it can be replaced. It's not, do you know what I mean? It's not taking away life or anything, but it was just the fact that
I guess the morality side, isn't it?
Yeah, you went out your way to do something for someone, and whoever took it, in your head you would think, do you know what? Like, I know not many people go out and get people lunch when they're working and things like that. Like, and we said we'd get them KFC like the next day. Like, do you know what I mean? We were good to them, and in your head you should be thinking, do you know what? Like, someone's kind, these people are good. These are good people, they've given me kindness, so do you know what, for whatever reason I might want to take this belonging of theirs in a room I shouldn't even be in anyway.
I'm just not going to do it.
But yeah, they did. I was really upset, and I never could find them after that. They just went,
well, because they got the Michael Kors. That's why.
Got and sold it, giving it to their wife.
That's what I'm saying.
I'll give you a present.
But so I guess then moving forward, for like, what would you say then? What would be your word of advice for someone who is vulnerable and, you know, should work towards putting their guard down? And then on the reverse, what would be your advice to someone who is maybe dealing with someone at the moment who has their guard up?
I just think, vulnerability, like I said, allows you to be very self-aware of yourself, but it is also an energy magnet. So it allows people to kind of get drawn into you, let people know the real you. And I think that innovation is built from vulnerability. I think that kind of coming out your comfort zone is very powerful in itself. It allows you to grow as a person and allows you to do amazing things. So just do it. Like, no one's going to judge you for letting your guard down or being vulnerable or asking those questions or whatever. Like, it's kind of a preconceived idea in your head that people that are vulnerable are weak or they're not strong, or do you know what I mean? Like, that's not the case. I think being vulnerable is actually very strong and very powerful rather than it being weak. I think you're weak if you're too scared to express how you feel or what you want to say. And I think those people dealing with someone who's got their guard up just understand that we're not all the same, we're not built the same, and everyone's going to take their own path in life and be ready to let their guard down when they are ready to let their guard down. But just make sure that you're kind of encouraging them and making sure that they feel safe enough to let their guard down, and nothing bad's going to happen. Like, if you're in a friendship or relationship or a work situation, like, you're there for that person no matter what, because you've built a relationship of whatever sorts with them. So yeah, just let them know that they're safe, the positives of letting their guard down, and don't hold it against them because they probably won't do it again.
There she goes again with the jams.
Go on. Do you have any advice for anyone that has their guard up, or anyone that kind of knows someone that has it up and needs to let it down?
I'd say for people with their guard up, I think my advice would be different for a man and a woman. So I think for a woman, I think as women, I think we go through a lot, and I think we're very sensitive, and so things that might not affect our male counterparts will affect us in more depth than it would if you were a man. And I think that's just because we are more in tune with our emotions, we're hormonal or whatever, and so I think that as women we need to take responsibility for our lack of vulnerability. And we can do that just by understanding in more depth and more detail why we are the way that we are, or why am I so scared to let my guard down. And I think just acknowledging where that sort of guard has come from in itself is something that is so powerful. Like, no one's saying that, okay, you acknowledge it, and now that you've acknowledged it, you've got to put your guard down. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I think understanding where or what event has happened that has allowed you, understanding the event that's happened that's caused you to have your guard up is already one step closer to trying to break down those barriers. So that's what I would say for a woman. For a man who's sort of like scared of vulnerability or is not welcoming vulnerability, I would just say that I know that probably this comes from the people that you have around you, and maybe like your fear comes from like you feel like you might be judged by someone around you. But I think masculinity for me, and how I see masculinity, is doing what you think is right, not doing what is accepted by others. Yeah. And so, for a man, to me, it's more attractive if you can just be your true, authentic self. If you want to laugh, you laugh. If you want to cry, you cry. If you want to be angry, you be angry. But just being able to experience all of the emotions on the spectrum, rather than just being this one, just mute emotion that's not really happy, not really sad, not really anything, just like zoom. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that's what I would say. And then for people who are maybe experienced or having experiences with someone who are not welcoming vulnerability, I would say only you can decide how much time, energy, resources to invest in that person or that relationship, because again, you are you, and you are the only person who has that mental limit. And so I think it's not going to be a thing where you talk to your friend and your friend's going to say, okay, if by July the 10th this person hasn't got their guard down, you must leave. It's not as like black and white as that. I think like with anything, time will reveal itself. And so you might wake up one day and just be like, oh, do you know what, I've had enough today, and then call it quits. But then at the same time, I think also understand that people, like what you mentioned, come from different backgrounds, and people have their own baggage, and prior to you meeting them, they had a whole life before you, friends, work colleagues, relationships, whatever. And with that whole life before you comes traumas, things that they've experienced, people that they've met that may have hurt them, and so there has to be an element of patience and understanding when you are dealing with those friendships or relationships. So that would be, I guess, my words of wisdom. Yeah,
that's really good.
So yeah, guys, we hope you enjoyed the episode. It took a bit of a turn because I wasn't expecting it to talk a lot about relationships, but I think
it just naturally, like, it happens. It's like you said, when you're in a relationship, that's probably when you feel the safest, you feel the most comfortable. Obviously, it's two people coming together and almost being one, if you like. So it probably happens most in a relationship, but it's just about being vulnerable in all aspects of life and to the people that you come across.
But I do want to say, though, don't be like not smart. So don't be going around and just say, I'm vulnerable. And like, when it's clearly a situation where you should have your guard up, don't be like, oh, Chanel said I'm going to be vulnerable, so I'm going to be vulnerable. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it comes with common sense. Like, there are situations where, you know, you need to have your guard up and you need to just take things as face value and just, like, you know, leave the situation. Like, I think in those types of situations where it is very black and white, take the message and, like, don't let your guard down. But I think in those scenarios where it might not be as black and white, might not be as easy, you know, you would learn. I think the real growth comes from being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be in that medium of safe but not safe kind of thing. So yeah, that's like a little mini disclaimer for anyone.
If anyone comes for us and tells us that we told them. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for listening to another episode of The High Grade. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube. There's a lot of people viewing.
Oh, yep, go on.
Yeah, there's a lot of you people viewing, and we can see you, and you're not subscribing. So
what's the name for today?
So you, Karina, watching and not subscribing, make sure that you subscribe. Don't be a hater, guys. We put out a lot of content because we really want to kind of just change one person's life or change one viewpoint, give you a few gems. So what you can do to help us would be amazing. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure you rate and review 5 stars only, please.
Oh, and follow us at The High Grade Podcast on Instagram.
Bye.